Welcome everyone, and thanks for tuning in to the Chair Sessions with Dr. D. American Blues Scene magazine calls our guest one of today's top female blues rock guitarists, and that was pretty clear to everyone that attended the recent Garden State Live North to Shore Blues Artist Night at the Hard Rock's Soundwaves Theater in Atlantic City recently. I have on the line with us today, Debra Devi. Today, Debra's going to talk to us about her music. She's going to introduce new listeners to her albums and her book entitled The Language of the Blues. So with that, welcome aboard, Debra Devi.
Hey, Darren.
Great to have you on today.
Yeah, great to be here.
So there's, before we even get into your music, I want to just talk a little bit about there's still a lot of hype circulating about that energetic show at the Hard Rock in Atlantic City last weekend. You shared the stage with Twisted Livin' and Billy Walton Band, but tell us what that was like for you. What are your reflections looking back on that? I know the energy's still riding high on that. We're seeing a lot of videos and a lot of clips from that show.
Yeah, that was a great show at a great venue. It's the Garden State Live series that's happening, I believe, once a month, sponsored by North to Shore, and taking place in the Soundwaves Theater inside Hard Rock Atlantic City. And this one was called Garden State Live Emerging Blues Artists. So it, was included my band. And we had a great time. It's a great crew, wonderful stage, nice full audience. And it was a blast.
Yeah, the crowd was definitely into it. I shot video that night. I was into it. Really great show. So introduce your band members for us real quick. The band members that performed with you that night. Yeah,
my band is John Roccasano on the drums, Kevin Jones on bass, and Brian Rigby on keys.
Great. Now let's talk about you. Tell us a little bit about your background, your inspirations, your influences.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I was born in the South, but raised mostly in the Midwest. And it was there that I was exposed to Chicago blues artists when I was still really young. I had a friend who was an older guy who was booking artists like 𝘱𝘱 and Sun Seals at a theater in Milwaukee, and he stuck me in to see shows. And I had the secret desire to play guitar, but when I tried to broach the subject with my mother, she was somewhat horrified at the thought of her teenage daughter playing electric guitar. But when I'll never forget it, when I saw Sun Seals play, he was so powerful and he could just flatten the whole room with just one note. And I thought, you know what, maybe I could try to do that. Like, instead of trying to play as fast as all the, musicians on the radio, all the male, guitar players, maybe trying to find the right note would be an alternate approach. So it was really the blues that gave me my hope that I could play music. And but I didn't start playing until my senior year in college when I saw Bonnie Raitt. And that was it. I saw her play electric guitar and I was like, it's okay for women. And I got a guitar the next day, and then I moved to New York, and I could barely play guitar, but I started going to auditions, and I got into some punk bands and wound up touring all over the U.S. and Canada and Europe, and just learning to play on my way.
Wow, so that it sounds like it happened pretty quick and a little bit later in your life.
Yeah, like I said, I really didn't start playing until the end of college, and then I moved to New York right after with that guitar that I'd bought in a pawn shop, a Fender Mustang.
Oh, cool.
And I didn't know anyone in New York City, so I just started looking up auditions and going and falling on my face. And I think what gave me the courage was the anonymity of a big city and being able to say, my motto was dare to suck. Like, no one knows you. Just go in. If you make a fool of yourself, which I did many times, that's okay. But to my shock, I actually got in a band, and that sort of got me going.
I love it. I love hearing stories like that, and it's funny because you beat me to the question. I was going to say it sounds like a pretty big and courageous move that you made, and you kind of talked about where you got that courage. So, and you also mentioned Bonnie Raitt. You were inspired by Bonnie Raitt, and you said to yourself, "Oh wow, I can play guitar." So, or I can play the blues.
Oh, I think just guitar,
Guitar.
electric guitar. When she came out with her, her blues signature Strat, I stood up and started screaming and yelling, and all my other little preppy friends were trying to pull me down. They're like, "Shut up, you're embarrassing us." And I was just like, "Ah!" And
Ooh,
that was it. So
it
I
was
knew I had to
liberating.
play. I knew I had to play guitar.
Yeah, that's great.
So, yeah.
That was a liberating moment for you. So tell us a little bit about before that, your musical experience, like as far as what you listened to before you had that experience, because it sounds like that was a transformative spot for you in your life. So before that, like growing up in your home, like what was music? A lot of music played in your house?
Yeah, my parents love music, and my father is, in fact, a very accomplished jazz and ragtime piano player. He's never performed or played with other people. He's always done it just for pleasure. He's an economics professor, and he would come home from teaching class and play piano for a few hours. So I grew up listening to that, and then my parents always played jazz in the house. It was Oscar Peterson, Thelonious Monk, Ella
Ooh.
Fitzgerald. So I grew up listening to that stuff, and I really loved it.
So you have like a little bit of a classic jazz background. That's what you were exposed to early on.
Yeah, and then my brother was listening to Creedence, and I fell in love with the Green River record, and I remember hearing Susie Q and the crazy feedback that John Fogerty played
Ah,
on that, and to
yeah.
me it was just so eerie and spooky. I just listened to it over and over, and I started to really become obsessed with the sound of electric guitar. I had like sort of a greaser neighbor who turned me on to Led Zeppelin, and I just freaking loved Led Zeppelin. Um, and all my friends, all my girlfriends just thought I was crazy listening to this like weird old classic rock. Um, but yeah, so I I just kind of fell in love with electric guitar and its singing quality.
So the blues back then for you. I mean, what did you know about the blues? Did you even think about the blues back then, or were you kind of consumed with the with what you were already being exposed to?
Well, all I knew was, as I mentioned, that this older friend of mine would take me down to the Metropole Theater to see these phenomenal Chicago blues artists who were coming into Milwaukee. And I met a kid there my age, and we started dating, and he was just this like little blues fanatic, and through him I got turned on to John Lee Hooker and BB King, and we went out to see BB King play in a cornfield halfway between Chicago and Milwaukee, and I just fell madly in love with the blues.
Yeah, there's something about seeing BB King too. I mean, I've seen him a couple times. I was fortunate enough to see him a few times. I mean, to watch him perform, it's like watching the essence of the blues.
Well, and he's so classy too, and so
Yeah.
cool, and I've told this story on stage where when my friend, who his name is Mike Fleming, and I were out in the middle of this cornfield, and they had a big stage set up that was being run by generators, and it's hot, it's August, the mosquitoes are out, and the generator kept blowing, and that was kept stranding BB King in the middle of his guitar solos. And he and his band were in full dinner jackets, polished shoes, in this heat, and he never lost his cool. He never threw a fit, which it's very embarrassing if you're in the middle of playing a guitar solo and the power just goes out. You just feel like
Yeah.
an idiot. And he just was so cool and patient and gracious with it. And I really took that lesson from him. Like, wow, that's how you want to be on stage. And it was beautiful.
I think you summarized it perfectly for him. I mean, that was his way, his Tao, so to speak, the Tao of BB King. That was those qualities just really defined who he was, and that was really from throughout his career, from the beginning to the end.
Yeah, he had and when I began to research my book, The Language of the Blues, I, I learned a lot about Yoruban culture and West African culture, and the idea that they had that the highest um, character that someone could demonstrate was generosity. If you were generous, if you were kind, that proved that you were connected to divinity and to soul. And it's kind of an ethic that survived slavery and all the horrors that were visited upon the West African people who were brought here. that they were able to maintain these ethics of generosity, Southern hospitality, behaving in a cool way when something difficult was happening.
Yes.
And I began to see like the connections.
Yeah, maintaining all of that, all of those qualities with such struggle.
Yeah.
Intense struggle that many of us will never even experience in our lives.
Oh, we won't experience it unless aliens capture us and take us to another planet and make us till their fields. We will never experience it.
And I'll tell you, that's one of the things, as far as the blues go, the stories, when you really, I feel like for myself, when I really immerse myself in the music and the stories of the blues, and you feel it, it's almost surreal. It's like going back, when you really allow yourself to feel it, it's really like going back in a time capsule, and it can be bittersweet, because there's the struggles, but what I also like about the blues is that there's also this, I'll call it, there is a glorious part of the blues. There is that, it's like the triumph through the struggle, the triumph over the struggle. It's the, like you said, the maintaining a certain composure, a certain level of humanity through the struggle. It's what gets you through it. And I think for me, the blues that's a big part of the blues for me, is to really feel that. And I really feel like that connects us, not only to the music, but to diversity of people and cultures that we may know nothing about. How about for you? So tell us a little bit more about about the attraction to the blues.
It moved me, and it taught me about music. I mean, these again are ethics that come from West Africa, is this idea that you don't show off on your instrument, rather you use it to connect to soul. And, there is a wonderful musicologist named John Chernoff who studied drumming in Ghana, and he noticed that his teachers would take the sticks away from young students who were showing off too much or playing what his teacher would call yoli yoli, which meant nothing, nothing. And they were just like, and he's like, took their sticks, and he said, they need to learn to cool their hearts before they can play. And it circles back to this concept of coolness, which is in Yoruba, they have a phrase, itutu, which means coolness. And it designates art or music that has that feeling of connection to the divine, to soul. And that's what his teacher was trying to teach these young students. And that's what the blues teaches. When you listen to a great blues solo, it's not about the flash. It's about the emotion and the connection.
Yeah, and it almost takes much of the time, it's a very disciplined approach, no?
I guess it's disciplined, yeah.
And I think, and it really, and that allows the music to really, like you said, to feel it, to be highlighted in ways that maybe sometimes gets lost in the, like you said, the thrashing guitars and the fast playing, right?
Well, it's a maturity. It's
Yes.
a more mature approach to music than, look at me and look what I can do.
Yeah. I think maturity is a good word. I think I probably should have used that word instead of disciplined. And so this brings us to your book. The book is called The Language of the Blues. Tell us a little bit about that, how the inspiration for the book came about. You've kind of already got into it with, a little bit.
The book is called The Language of the Blues, From Alcorub to Zuzu, has a foreword by Dr. John. And it came about because I was writing for some blues magazines, and I was fascinated with words like mojo and hoodoo, 𝘲𝑠𝑐𝑜w, phrases like kill and floor. And I started to wonder, well, what language is mojo? Where did kill and floor come from? Why did Howlin' Wolf write about that? And I started keeping a list of words and phrases. And when I got up to 100 of them, I thought, I really want to research this. Maybe I could write a book, and that would be my excuse to do that. And I did a proposal and I got a book deal. And I quickly realized that what I wanted to do the most was speak to as many elder blues artists as I could find and ask them what these words meant to them. Because when I did the research, there were a lot of academics talking to each other about these things, but I didn't really see many of them talking to the artists. So the first person I interviewed was 𝘂𝘂𝘶, the Howlin' Wolf's guitarist and closest friend. And I went on from there to talk to Robert Jr. Lockwood, who had grown up with Robert Johnson because his mother was Robert Johnson's girlfriend.
Wow.
Milton Campbell, Henry Gray, so many amazing artists who shared their stories of growing up in the Delta and their insights into these words and, their oral history.
Talk about going right to the source, huh?
Yeah. I was very lucky to do that, and I'm just so grateful that they were willing to give up their time,
So, looking back on that project, what's your takeaway for you personally, creatively, maybe even spiritually?
Well, my takeaway was the things I learned about all the ethics that are coded in the blues. And again, circling back to the countries where West Africans were taken from to be brought here, they were, taken out of their lives, their busy lives in their communities and all the skills that they had and things they were doing. And when they were brought here, pretty soon their drums were outlawed, their languages were outlawed, their religions were outlawed, because there were slave rebellions. A lot of the people brought over here were soldiers. They knew how to talk with drums. And because a lot of West African languages are tonal, like Asian languages, where the tone affects the meaning of the word, which is not something we have in English, drummers can talk with each other. They can, speak. So you had slaves who had drums organizing rebellions because the drums would carry, across to like someone on another plantation. And the slave owners figured that out, and, they passed what are called the Black Laws, which involved, just executing any slave caught with a drum, an instrument, speaking their language. It was really brutal. But somehow these ideas about coolness, about maturity in art survived. They were encoded with these people, and as they became Americans and started, creating their own, music from what they had, we start to get the blues, we start to get jazz, we start to get rock and roll. And it's powerful stuff,
I was just going to say that, and that's one of the things that when I started to delve into your book, and I haven't finished it yet, but I did get into some sections where you talked about that, and I thought the same thing. Powerful and transformative.
Well, I think what's frustrating is that so much of this is not taught in the schools. There are so many of what linguists call African retentions in American English. When we say banana, yam, chigger, that's cool, that's got soul, these things all trace back to West African languages. But, we're not taught that in school. We're taught about what the Dutch provided in terms of ideas, what the French, had ideas about equality. And there's just silence on the tremendous contribution to American culture and language from West Africa. And it's only getting worse now with this, ridiculous suppression of DEI that's going on.
Yes.
But this is information that we need and that should be taught.
Yeah, it's stuff that we use. It's language that we use every day that we don't even realize the origins of. So it's and it sounds like your book it contributes to kind of raising awareness and bringing that to the forefront.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope it's a small contribution to it.
So let's talk a bit now about your music. We've got some EPs and some albums out. So the first one I saw, it looks like from 2016, called Get Free.
Yeah, I think it's 2017.
Okay.
That's my first solo album because I had been playing guitar in bands and not singing. except maybe a little bit of backup. But in the last band that I was in, the singer, we had management, we had all this great stuff happening, and the singer kind of went a little bananas and blew everything that we had going. And I thought, you know what? I've got to learn to sing because that'll be at least one less lunatic in the band. So I started singing and writing music, and I found some great musicians to work with out here in New Jersey. And I went into the studio and made my first album. I made Get Free. I produced it myself with the help of, a couple of fantastic engineers. And that was my first record.
Oh, and a little side note is so you also played the title track of that at the Hard Rock show. Great song, and it's one that I think is just so easy to get into the flow and to really it was a good intro to kind of get yourself loosened up and ready for to kind of just immerse yourself in the music.
Thank you.
Did you have a certain concept in mind when you were putting that album together?
No, I mean, I really didn't know who I was as an artist. I was just trying to find out. And what I found out is I like to track a lot of guitars. And I was working at SST Studios in Weehawken, and they also rent out backline gear. So it was just like I was a kid in a candy store. Like, oh, let's roll out the orange AC30 for this song. Let's roll out the the Marshall for this one. Let's use the Fender Let's use the Hot Rod DeVille on this one. So I got to pick and really play with tones, and
Fun.
I had such a great time. And I discovered that I also love producing, and I've produced all my records ever since.
Very cool. And so you said you were like during that album you were trying to figure out who you were. So did that bring you to the next project, which was what I saw was an EP called Wild Little Girl?
Yeah, I got clearer on myself, and I love to play all kinds of music, but my voice, I've played in industrial bands. I mean, I love Ministry, but my voice doesn't lend itself to Ministry. So I sound more like Sheryl Crow, people say. So I had to kind of lighten up my tones. I had to get my guitar tones. I had, coming from hardcore punk and industrial, I began to seek out more natural vintage sounding guitar tones. And I made an EP called Wild Little Girl that I feel like I just did that EP. And then after that, I did A Zillion Stars Overhead with Jörgen Carlson from Government Mule on bass. And just been recording ever since.
So a Zillion Stars Overhead, talk a little bit about that one. Again, was there an idea that you had in mind for?
No, there wasn't. Wild Little Girl kind of was about that idea that, as a girl being told, that playing electric guitar would be too loud, being socialized to be quiet and all that stuff. So that's why I called that EP Wild Little Girl. I was like, I really want women and girls to be able to be themselves and to feel free to, express all their energy and all their loudness.
Awesome.
But with A Zillion Stars Overhead, what happened was I had met some people affiliated with Government Mule, and in particular, the folks at Homestead Amplifiers, who, is an incredible amplifier company out in Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania, and they make the amps for Warren Haynes, Jimmy Herring, Susan Tedeschi. So through them and another friend, I found myself backstage at Government Mule's New Year's Eve shows at the Beacon in New York. And I met Jörgen, who was playing bass for Mule at the time, and we just totally connected because we both love to produce music. So I was asking him, how do you mic your amp on stage, and how do you get that sound, and how do you do it in the studio? And he ended up suggesting that we record together, and I was sort of like, really? Okay. And about 6 weeks later, he was on the East Coast, and we went in the studio with drummer John Hummel, and we just pounded out a bunch of songs, and those became the A Zillion Stars Overhead EP. And to have Jörgen's extraordinary bass playing on it was just a complete thrill.
Yeah, and I was listening to that one. There is some fantastic synergy on that one. That's got a little bit of a psychedelic feel to it, no?
Well, we jammed, everything was cut live in the studio. I mean, I overdubbed stuff later, but the core of it, like we have this 9.5 minute version on there of my song When It Comes Down, because, we started playing it. And I mean, if you're with the organ, you're going to jam.
Yeah.
And, it just took off and we didn't stop.
Yeah,
Until 9.5 minutes later. And I put that version on the EP. There's a shorter version, like a more radio friendly version on the EP also. But, the full version's on there. I made a really fun, like, psychedelic video for it.
I saw that. Excellent.
But, Jorgen also had a really strong pop sensibility. Like, he's Swedish. He loves ABBA. So I chose another song of mine called Stay. That's almost like a dance song. And he played amazing on that too. And there's a video on YouTube for Stay also. And the videos have like footage of us in the studio, jamming together.
Great synergy. That's it's a fantastic track.
Thank you.
I love that one. And you actually,
it's a fun one.
And yeah, and you actually performed When It Comes Down live too, I think too, right? At the Hard Rock? Did you
at Garden State Live? Yeah, we did.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, that's our song. We like to improvise and jam as a band. And, after working with Jorgen, I knew I had to get a bass player of his caliber. And I was able to get Kevin Jones, who's been playing around New York for a while and is, respected and really amazing. And, Johnny Roccasano as a drummer too is just freaking unbelievable. So, I love to let us off the chain. And When It Comes Down is one of those songs where we definitely do that.
Yeah, and I think too, the synergy of you all that night at the Hard Rock was incredible too. And I think
thanks.
That was you definitely felt it.
Well, we really developed that synergy during the pandemic because I started a live stream, and it started in my living room, just me alone singing into my to my phone. And people were very responsive. I was just so lonely and freaked out like everyone else. Yeah. I just thought, well, I'll start singing. And people were like, well, can you do it next week? Because we need stuff to look forward to. And it developed into a live stream that we did at Johnny's studio, which is called Johnny Rocks Records. And once we were safely able to gather, we were doing a pandemic live stream called 𝘕𝘓𝑚ification Station. And we had Martin Schmidt on keys, who's also incredible. But that's what really got our jamming going, And so then the final EP that I put out is called 𝘕𝑚ification Station Volume 1. And what it is Johnny and I combed through the tracks because he recorded all of our live streams through Pro Tools. We picked some of the best ones and mixed them down. So that's a fully live record with no overdubs. And it did surprisingly well.
Yeah, that's another great one too. I actually got to listen to that one too from beginning to end.
Thanks.
Debra, I want to thank you for coming on today and talking about your music. I'm sure we could have talked for another hour or longer, I'm sure. But I hope maybe you'll come on again and we can get more into your music and some of the new things going on. I know you've got a lot of exciting things on the horizon, and we'll save that for another episode. But I want to thank you again for coming on. And,
well, thank you, Darren.
And sharing your inspiration, sharing your music, your energy, and keep up that momentum.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, Darren. Bye.